Welcome to First. I'm Nichelle Polston along with Mark Eichman. Shirley Min will have a report later in the broadcast.
Delaware business owners are defending the state from a new American Express survey that says the state ranks poorly when it comes to startups.
The Americans with Disabilities Act has advanced how we view the handicap, but 25 years later, the law is still a hit or miss proposition. A report on the law, and we meet the man responsible for its creation.
And these pictures are all you need to know about this story. Bugs, lots and lots of bugs. The Delaware Museum of Natural History loves them, and so do we.
First, your public media news magazine starts now.
Delaware is the corporate home to some of the biggest companies of our day. It also boasts of its business-friendly nature. But a new American Express Open survey questions the ease of starting up a company here, saying the first state ranks low when it comes to new businesses headed by women. In our first look, we spoke to some women who have started companies, and while Delaware may not be perfect, they like what the state has to offer. Capital One, DuPont, Trump Casino, just a few of the corporations that call Delaware home. With names like these, you'd think Delaware would be a good place to launch a business. American Express Open doesn't see it that way. The company ranked Delaware as one of the worst states for women-owned businesses. Their findings are based on the percentage of growth of women-owned firms after the recession.
I've heard complaints from business owners, small and medium-sized business owners, women and business owners of all types, that in the recovery, access to capital, particularly for startups, has been difficult.
Senator Chris Coons says efforts to help connect business owners to capital are in the works.
There's a variety of different programs by the Chamber, by the university, and by the SBA to make sure that women have access to capital, have access to mentorship, have access to support to make entrepreneurship easier and more possible for them.
Tanya Y. is benefiting from some of those efforts.
I'm the president founder of Delaware Green Mattress Disassembling and Recycling LLC.
The Wilmington University grad wanted to utilize her master's degree in environmental stewardship, so she turned a class project into a business. Tanya admits the process from conception to creation was challenging, but enlightening. Her biggest challenge? Financing.
Now I'm at the point of how do I find funding so I can get a building, so I can get trucks.
Tanya got a helping hand when she won the Great Dames Remarkable Ideas competition last year.
In addition to the grand prize of $25,000, she also has 2 business mentors, but she's met with quite a few people all over the state who have offered to support her because they love her idea.
Sharon Hake, co-founder of Great Dames, an organization that fosters and supports women leaders and entrepreneurs, says her organization came up with the idea because she was often asked to judge business pitch competitions, but there was something lacking.
I showed up and I noticed it was all men at these Shark Tank type events. There were very few, if any, women pitching their ideas. And it bothered me, because I knew from experience that there were a lot of brilliant women in this space.
So Sharon tapped her resources and got involved, inviting other women business owners to help out too. Donna Duffy is the CEO and founder of 3E Marketing Solutions, one of those women-owned businesses. Duffy's company is coaching Tanya on how to market her business. Donna, who has created 3 businesses in Delaware, says there are numerous reasons why Delaware is a good state for women startups.
I found Delaware to be such a receptive state to build ideas and to build a business and to connect with other people who were in the same situation that I was. It's a wonderful state for growing a business.
Federal and state organizations are also on board, helping to meet the needs of new businesses.
I've met with John Fleming, our SBA State Director. I've hosted Maria Contreras-Sweet, the National SBA Director, and we spent a day specifically focusing on this question, on how SBA loans and SBA matchmaking and relationships can help accelerate entrepreneurship, in particular for women in Delaware.
Both Donna and Sharon emphasize that resources are plentiful here.
Delaware has fantastic resources. We have them on our website. the Delaware Small Business Development Center, Nauvoo, Delaware. There's a brand new women's business center that's just been opened up, SCORE, Delaware. There are so many wonderful, wonderful, wonderful resources that are available to women entrepreneurs in Delaware. It's a great place to start a business.
Both women emphasize that cultivating business relationships is really the key to any successful business, and they add that since Delaware is so small, startups can benefit from that close relationship with other business owners to then help spread the word about their new ventures. Well,
curious, Mark, why did American Express open survey focus on women businesses?
Well, it's mostly in the numbers. According to the survey, 30% of startups are done by women, and that number is increasing, but we should note that the rate of women-owned small businesses are now at the level where they were before the 2008 recession, so that's partly why they came down so hard on Delaware.
Okay, thanks, Mark. You can follow our reporting of Delaware businesses on your home for Delaware news, newsworks.org/Delaware.
Coming up on First, we're going to the principal's office. First gets a look at how principals learn how to be principals. It's our Teach Me segment. And learn how creepy crawly bugs can be cool. First experience is at the Delaware Museum of Natural History.
This summer marks the 25th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act. Designed to level the playing field, the ADA prohibits discrimination and ensures equal opportunities for those living with disabilities. While the law isn't perfect, it has made a world of difference since its passage. Nowadays, wheelchair ramps, breaks in the curb, and elevators are commonplace. But Denise McMullen Powell remembers a time when they were luxuries.
When I went to Hercules, it was very difficult because there were no elevators in the buildings. I'd ask about, well, what happens when there's a fire? How do I get out of the building? And they just did the, oh, we'll get you out somehow or another. A little scary.
She remembers her bosses telling her it'd be cheaper to fire her than to make the necessary accommodations.
They were actually able to say things like that, and there's nothing I could do about it.
That's what life was like for Powell before the Americans with Disabilities Act. The 69-year-old contracted polio as a toddler. This was before the vaccine. She used crutches and braces for a while before having to switch over to a wheelchair full-time.
I eventually left in 1989 because it was getting too hard on me.
This is attorney Brian Hartman. He runs the Disabilities Law Program for the Community Legal Aid Society.
Prior to the ADA, there were very few state laws that required commercial establishments, stores, and vendors to not discriminate on the basis of disability. So that was one of the major changes that you've seen from 1990 until now.
The ADA was signed into law on July 26, 1990.
It was ADAPT that was climbing up the steps of the Capitol building to get them to introduce the ADA in the first place.
ADAPT is a grassroots organization that encourages activists like Powell to engage in civil disobedience in the name of disability rights.
That's why I've been arrested 20 times.
People like Denise made the way for someone like me.
Emmanuel Jenkins has only known life with the ADA.
They fought for it, and now my job is to fight to make sure it's upheld, to make sure that it keeps going, to make sure that I make way for the next generation.
Diagnosed with cerebral palsy, the 31-year-old says the ADA is not about special treatment. It's about independence.
I want to be able to live. And when I say that, I don't just mean breathe, because I'm breathing, I'm living, I'm married, I got a kid, I'm doing great. But I want to be able to live, to be able to go to work, to be able to go to school, to be able to take advantage of life, to be successful without a whole bunch of barriers.
Jenkins, who lives in Harrington with his family, is grateful to live in a state that encourages and supports opening the door wider for people with disabilities who want to work and contribute.
Employing people with disabilities makes good business sense, and it helps government improve the competitiveness of our workforce.
But as far as Delaware has come, the newest employee of the state's Developmental Disabilities Council says there's still work left to do. For example, Delaware's Department of Transportation recently inventoried all of the sidewalks the state is responsible for in each county. The report shows only 44% of the total miles it maintains meet ADA standards.
They concede that there were problems in the past, but they're trying their best to move forward and to come up with a deliberative way to fix things.
Money's an obvious issue, but Hartman says sometimes making sense out of hundreds of pages of federal law can be tough.
Whenever you have a regulation or a law, there's ambiguity, and the ADA is no different.
It should happen that if you're not in compliance with a law that's 25 years old, that there is some sort of penalty and some sort of acknowledgement that it's bad and that you have to correct it.
Other states are also guilty of noncompliance with the ADA, so Delaware isn't alone. And unfortunately, it typically takes a very motivated individual who's willing to take the time and make the effort to file a lawsuit to enforce the law. The 25th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act is July 26th.
Shirley filed her story a few months ago, just before her maternity leave, and we're going to continue the conversation on the Americans with Disabilities Act, this time in Rehoboth Beach. Why? Well, say hello to Tony Coelho, former California congressman and an author of the original ADA legislation. Thanks for welcoming us into your home.
Thank you, Nikki.
Let's start off by talking about your inspiration behind this legislation. And actually, first and foremost, 25 years ago, there were no handicap, there weren't much available for those who were living with disabilities.
Well, what's exciting about that now, Nikki, is that ADA is not only the law of the land in the United States, it's now the law of the land in 52 different countries, which is really exciting. But I got involved because when I was 16, I was in the dairy barn milking cows, and the next thing I know, I woke up and a doctor was sitting on me. I couldn't speak, but I could hear, and they didn't know what it was, supposedly. And after several doctors went to witch doctors, they couldn't cure whatever it was going on. My parents had been told, but they wouldn't accept it, that I had epilepsy. And my parents, being very Portuguese and very Catholic, they knew that if, from canon law established in 400 AD, that if you had epilepsy or possessed by the devil, you couldn't do certain things. And so they were very concerned about that, because the whole story was that if you have seizures, God is punishing you because somebody in the family committed a major sin.
Yeah.
So I grew up with that, and I tried to get in the Catholic seminary, and I got rejected because of my seizures. It changed my life totally, and I couldn't get a job, couldn't drive. The church, I felt, had turned against me. My parents had turned against me. And I became depressed and drank a lot, got drunk every day. I then got suicidal. And I came out of it one day because I heard some merry-go-round music and little kids laughing and so forth. Been there the whole time, but I'd never heard it before. That day I heard it, and something came over me and basically said, you want to be just like those little kids. And from that day forward, I've never let anybody or anything stop me from believing what I want to believe or do what I want to do. And after that, I then went and lived with Bob Hope for a year. He told me I should get into politics. I did. 13 years as a staffer, and then I served in Congress. And then when I got to Congress, I tried to amend bills to take care of people with disabilities. And I realized that that wasn't enough. We needed our basic civil rights, because we didn't have anything, no protection, until 1990.
Well, one of the points in the last story is that there isn't a universal enforcement in the ADA. It's more like if we catch someone, we can deal with it, but what do you think should be done to improve?
Well, basically, what we've not had is an enforcement of the ADA. It's there, and for years there wasn't enforcement. I have to applaud the current administration. Tom Perez, who's from Maryland, Secretary of Labor, but he went to the Justice Department, head of civil rights. And he, for the first time, really enforced the ADA. Cities, counties, states, corporations, individuals, he really enforced it. And
Now, all of a sudden, things are changing because of that enforcement. Tom has now moved to Secretary of Labor, and he, again, is pushing things. We now have federal contractors and subcontractors who have to hire people with disabilities, can't discriminate, so forth. So the ADA started, and certain things have happened. We have curb cuts, we have a lot of things, but we haven't completed the process. And so after 25 years, we're making more progress and things are happening. The one thing that we don't have is dealing with anything about transportation. Mm-hmm. You can't discriminate, but how can you get there? And then working. We don't have anything in there. You can't discriminate, but how do you get a job and so forth? And so we're really working hard on that, and we're making great progress.
Well, July 18th marked the 25th anniversary of the ADA legislation. Can you tell me what it was like? Because you actually spoke at the event in Dover.
Well, it's a great event. I'm a very big fan of Rita, who's Secretary of Health for Delaware, and the governor, and they put this together. It was a wonderful event, and it gave us an opportunity to celebrate what has happened, and particularly what's happening in Delaware. The governor, Jack Markell, has really helped in regards to disabilities. He tried to do that all across the country. I mean, he's been fantastic.
If there's one thing that you can personally focus on when it comes to this act, what would it be?
Well, what I'm doing today is really aggressively pushing work and transportation, because that concludes it. Because those of us with disabilities want to work because that makes us part of society. We can own a home, we can own a car, we can get places we want to get, and so forth. So that's what it's all about now, is making sure that we complete that process.
So tell me, you're a Delawarean now, although you are at one point in time in the politics in California, but what's special about Delaware?
I love it. It's a great little community. It's changing like everybody should change. It's fantastic to be here, and my grandkids were just here, and we had a ball when they were here in the swimming pool and having fun all day long. It's a great city.
Well, I'd like to thank you so much for being with us here today. Tony Coelho, thank you. Former California Congressman and author of the Americans with Disability Act. Let's turn to the studio now and see Mark.
If you're just tuning into First, then you can catch up on what you missed by going to WHYY.org/first. Past shows are there right now. Check out our e-newsletter to get the word on what WHYY is doing in Delaware. Governor Markell called legislation aimed at improving teacher pay one of the highlights of the recently completed legislative session. The idea is to let teachers stay as teachers and not become principals just to get more money. But what does it take to be a principal? Here's Delaware education reporter Avi Wolfman-Arent with the answer to that question. Avi.
Thanks, Mark. U.S. Secretary of Education Arne Duncan once called it the toughest job in America. School principals deal with discipline, logistics, staffing, budgets, all in action-packed work weeks that usually last about 60 hours. So what does it take to run a public school? I got a taste in this month's installment of Teach Me, School Principal Edition.
My child, Daniel.
Do you mind if I take some notes?
Oh, go ahead. No, because I know
you.
you'll need to take a lot of notes for this one, because I am like extremely upset.
Of all the unpleasant tasks school principals confront, there may be none more unpleasant than the one John Epstein is facing right now, the angry parent.
You don't take care of this today, I'm going to the newspaper, going to the superintendent, and I really feel like maybe you should even be terminated. Like, I just can't believe you don't know this was going on.
Epstein has multiple advanced degrees, he's worked in schools for much of his adult life, and he knows what he should try to do in situations like these.
I want you to know that I'm going to gather all the information, find out what has occurred.
He negotiates, he provides comfort, and not surprisingly, it isn't enough.
No, I'm just not satisfied. No, we need to take further action.
Before Epstein can even make inroads, another crisis erupts.
Sorry, excuse me, there's a fight in the cafeteria.
Like that, Epstein is off, navigating the treacherous hallways of Change Middle School. As the name may indicate, Change Middle School isn't a real place, and that angry parent wasn't an actual angry parent. Rather, they are the creations of this man, Sean Gallagher.
Today is what we call the inbox activity, which is basically us creating the reality of a very hectic morning in a school. They're the principal, and we just overload them with a million things and basically see how they deal with it.
And at this point, I'm ready to take him out as of today.
Gallagher runs the Delaware Leadership Project, an alternative certification program for aspiring principals who want to work in high-need Delaware schools. Inbox Day is just one part of a 6-week intensive program the recruits must complete over the summer. And that's before the real work begins.
So after the summer intensive, they're going to be placed in a school in an actual assistant principal position.
After this resident year, participants are deemed ready for actual administrative jobs. It's a rigorous and selective program designed to be much different than the typical certification path.
We're also pushing them much further than, for instance, I got pushed in my principal preparation program when it was strictly just getting a master's degree and a letter that said that I could be a principal. This is a much richer program. It's much more based on the realities of school every day and actual immersion in the work.
What I feel is important versus what does the school feel important?
The immersion is followed by a lot of nitpicking. After all the manufactured crises end, Gallagher and his team gather the recruits for a breakdown session.
What actually then would you do knowing the context of what happened? That's all you know at this point, because that's your low inference data.
There is a lot to recap here between the angry parents, the fire drill, the fight in the cafeteria, and yes, even us, the surprise film crew that threw a wrench into everything.
Obviously, for the role play, we set you up and bombarded you with things where you were going to fail, and that's fine. Will you have failures like this every day as a school leader?
Probably. I hope not as many, but yeah.
Inbox Day isn't meant as a tutorial for solving individual problems, because you can't ever prepare for all the issues that will surface in a given day. Rather, the point is to overwhelm recruits so they understand the value of having systems in place that allow them to delegate.
School leaders that transform schools can handle those situations and build a high-capacity team, increase the skill of their staff members, and actually have a vision and a mission and move forward and accomplish it.
The folks at Delaware Leadership Project talk about vision and mission far more than they talk about building any individual skill, because it's easy to drown in all the day-to-day drama as a principal. It's a lot harder to keep an eye on the big picture.
You need to understand what it is you believe in and figure out a way to communicate that. We each have our own different passions on why we're in education, and not that there's a right or wrong, but as long as we can articulate those passions and do it with a sense of integrity and vision, that others will follow.
One thing to know, what you just saw is not a normal principal training program. Most aspiring principals still get their certification by taking training courses offered by a university.
And so how many principals in Delaware get to take this alternate, more kind of experiential path?
Very, very few. There are only 4 members of this year's Delaware Leadership Project cohort, and they're not going to let just anybody skip that master's degree.
So they're out of luck for doing that. But is there a sense that there'll be more of this alternative certification kind of pathway in the future?
Yeah, there's definitely a push in Delaware and in the nation really in general to diversify the principal training process. Not everyone has to go get a master's, and really overall when it comes to principal training and teacher training, there's a movement to make it less about getting a degree and more about experiencing what the profession is like. You know, doctors have their residency, right? So something teachers and principals should have similar experiences.
All right, thanks, Avi. You can read more on this and other education topics at newsworks.org/Delaware.
For those of you who love big, scary, strange-looking bugs, then we have a first experience for you this week. It is at the Delaware Museum of Natural History, where you can find Dr. Entimo's Palace of Exotic Wonders. You can get up close and personal with some of the strangest bugs you could ever find.
Welcome to the most incredible exhibit you are ever going to see. This is Dr. Entimo's Palace of Exotic Wonders. In here you're going to see the strange, the weird, and the scary. Not only do we have one of the largest spiders in the entire world, we have the devil with 2 heads, the theater of the macabre, and we have our giant hissing cockroaches, and the kitchen of cabinet curiosities. This exhibit is a fun way to show people some of the scarier things you'll see outside. This is showing you the weirdest of the weird, honestly. So we have the vinegaroons that do shoot kind of like an acetic acid at you. We have the scorpions, which everyone's really freaked out, but we show you some of the cool aspects of them. They glow in the dark. No one knew that. We have giant centipedes, and if you're lucky, you get to see her hunt as well, which is great. Arthropods are animals that have an exoskeleton and they don't have a backbone. So insects, arachnids. We also do have tarantulas and scorpions and millipedes and centipedes. Arthropods is the overall group name for them. There are many cultures that actually do eat insects and arthropods, and we don't do that here. So this is another way to kind of introduce something, different aspects of cultures that we don't experience very often. And there's lots of displays of items that people do eat. So this is a great chance for people to come see the weird and the odd and just experience something completely new. People are freaked out by them, and I get that. Some are a little odd looking, but I'm hoping they come here and they just learn how fascinating they are. They can just come here with an open mind. They'll leave with a whole new perspective on these guys. So these guys are a really big part of our ecosystem, and without them, we wouldn't have all the other cool animals that people really love to see outside. These guys are not as scary as you make them out to be. I want people to get up close and start to love these guys as much as I do.
Our experienced producer, Brian Druin, was brave enough to lend his hands for the bugs to crawl on in some of the shots in our piece. He drew the line at the hissing cockroach, though. You can actually hear the hissing. You can visit the exhibit now through September 7th. So to get more info online, go to delmnh.org.
And next week first takes you to Arden, where the artistry that neighborhood is known for is put on display, this time in the construction of canoes. It's a perfect story to cool you off on a hot summer day.
This month we featured 3 stories by Shirley Min, but some of you may ask, why isn't she here? Well, Shirley is a second-time mom and is enjoying time with baby Matilda.
And here's your proof. Monday marks Matilda's 2-month birthday. She was born May 27th. And if we just take a moment to look through Mom Shirley's photo album, you can see she has quite the head of hair.
Matilda made her first visit to the first newsroom a few weeks ago. She is a very calm baby, something I'm sure Shirley definitely appreciates.
And hopes that lasts,
yes,
for sure. So here's hoping Matilda and Shirley are having a good summer with the guys, Levi and Neil.
That is first for this week. We thank you for watching. For Shirley Min, Avi Wolfman-Arendt, and Mark Eichman, I'm Nichelle Polson. Have a great week. We leave you with some summer scenes from Rehoboth.